Okay, and we're ready to get started with our next talk. And so I'm really delighted to welcome Max and Hilliary to the stage.
Thank you. Yay.
All right. Thank you very much, Paula, for the nice short introduction. Don't wonder that we are written there with 3 people, because initially we have submitted the talk with 3 people, but as the stage is not big enough for 3 character, you have to shrink down. So in worst case, if you have any question afterwards, feel free to ask Andy. He is sitting in the second row here also with us and is waving the platform engineering flag. But first of all, Hilliary.
Oh, okay. Ladies first, I guess. Hi. So my name is Hilliary. I am a senior principal SRE at Red Hat these days. And I got to know Max through Andy, actually. And then we started talking about platform engineering stuff and product mindsets, and found that we had a really shared vision, and here we are.
And it actually took off exactly 1 year ago.
Yeah, exactly
KubeCon
a year ago, KubeCon Paris.
So my name is Max. I'm the founder and managing director of Liquid Reply. But most of my time I actually try to spend with community work, organizing KCDs and CNS and meetups and whatsoever. And somewhere between all of that, I found time with Andy and Hilliary to write together a book last year. And we tried to put it a little bit together, bringing you some of the insights of what we have discovered, because we thought it makes sense to give a short introduction what we see there. But first of all, I would like to start with a question. Who of you is a platform engineer or works on a platform? That's a mouthful. Who of you actually has a timeline or a budget limit? 1/3 around it? That's a pity, I would say. And that's one of the problems we are going today to talk about. So we see that a lot of internal platform projects, in quotation mark, are failing. And they're failing for various reasons. Now, I would call them more like a symptom, because they fail for some adoption purposes. We see that not every need is really good covered. We see that the management expectations are not clearly defined or clearly matched. And most of the time, we see that no promise, or most of the promises are not really matched in the end. But there's actually a couple of other problems which we see under it, which is the root cause more of why platform projects are failing. And this is because we see that there's missing a purpose for a platform. We see that there's no clear mission and vision. What we are doing, why we are doing, where we are heading to. We just do something which I love to call random engineering or random engineering, throwing things into the bucket. Coming to beautiful KubeCon, enjoying 4 days, 3 days, whatsoever of brainstorming with a lot of genius people, and come back to the company and say, like, I found something very, very cool. I would like to introduce it right now. And I spent the next 5 weeks to implement it. And it looks fantastic. But why? Did anyone ask you for that? Does it help you? Does it solve a problem? So that's what we see in a lot of the projects out there, that we do not care so much about for whom we are building it. And we still try to solve infrastructure first problems. And we have an infrastructure first thinking. We make infrastructure our first citizen problem, which is a little bit weird. Because why we go to the cloud, which should automate everything for us and should make our life easier, but actually we spend so much time on managing the infrastructure itself. So I'm a little bit lazy, so I asked ChatGPT and Claude, hey, tell me something about infrastructure first thinking. And even a stupid AI knows some of the key problems of infrastructure first thinking, but why we are not always aware of it, why we still spend time in going into solving problems on the infrastructure side, why we focus so much on the tools, why do we focus so much on build first something that manages maybe my network, my storage, and so on. And then after 1, 2 years, sometimes 3, we have also seen already customers who are at 4 years, we're going to ask finally the developer what they need, after we have practically deadly managed all of the infrastructure which we have in the cloud running. And then there's another phenomenon which we see in the last years, promoted strictly to the shift left. In my wording, it's actually extending left. I do not shift my workload down the ladder, I extend it. It's get more. Daniel Bryant once put it out there as the cognitive load. And we keep extending on it, we keep building on it. Because we don't shift, we extend. It's get more. So every organization has similar problems. They start with something as a product or a service which they want to develop. They spend time on how to release it. They spend time on how to operate it. And in the end, also to somehow protect it and put some security around it, compliance, and whatever the organization is asking you to do. Typically, with an organization, you're not the only department who does that. So maybe your neighbor in the other working room you maybe should talk to and have a coffee with is working on the same exact problem, just for a different other tool. And so the teams are growing, but we also see that they often fail or often get challenged by exactly the same problem. So why do we need to reinvent the same wheel? Well, someone smart says once, you build it, you run it. I think it's not so good to always do that and manage this whole silo. Sometimes it's good if you build it, if you take care about it, but if you share the running part. Because it's easier together going through some painful development and experience and whatsoever, rather than to focus entirely on your own thing. And that ultimately leads to that we need to put some of the capabilities together, right? And that's why we are here nowadays talking about platform engineering. So that we can help others to overcome those obstacles, those challenges, this shared journey which they have, and not make them running alongside alone, but together. Because sharing is caring, and then as a platform engineer, that's the easiest thing which you can do. Share the knowledge, the experience which you have gained as a community, as a group, with everyone else, and include everyone else into it. This is a very relevant aspect which we need to take care about. So this is a quote which we have put into our book. And we say, like, a platform without adoption is just infrastructure. And it's actually something which one dear friend of mine was always putting out there. He says, like, I have spent so much time, so much effort. I have 20 engineers working non-stop, 24/7 of implementing an IDP, coming up with backstage, need to tame a new cloud provider, going to a new region. But no one wants to work on that platform. They want to do it by themselves because they didn't find anything that really helps them solving their current challenges. They're more looking into, well, randomiering, bringing the next cool tech thingy which they found on the latest KubeCon.
So that gets us into the importance of purpose. If we look at this pyramid, we start at the bottom, we have technical feasibility. Especially in cloud native, right, things are almost endlessly technically feasible, right? Someone says, well, what do you think of, like, oh yeah, it's feasible, right? Then that narrows down to feasibility and then what the users really need, right? That can kind of narrow down your playing field a little bit, kind of brings things a little bit more into focus. And then at the very top, we have business value. So what's technically feasible, meets user needs, and then also provides a business value, right? And so when we bring these things together and kind of like bring that focus in, that's when we can start to say, like, what is our purpose, right? So this allows us to kind of decide on where we're going, how we're getting there, why we're making the decisions we are making today. This is all like bringing it to this is getting into the project management product mindset of it. Doing a thing because you can versus doing a thing because it provides value. And that value might be more on the social, like engineering pieces of things. It may be actual monetary value. It could be a mixture of both, right? That needs to be the guiding force for how you approach your engineering project. So you can't, it's like the 80-20 rule, right? You cannot solve all problems with one solution. That's not going to happen. So something is going to need to give. Somebody is going to need to compromise, right? So you want to build the right thing. You want to build what's viable, you want to build what's desirable, you want to build what's feasible, and when you bring these things together, you kind of can eventually figure out what the form and function of your platform ought to be, and also, the larger parts of the circles, what it ought not to be, or maybe doesn't need to be yet. So there's a few ways that we can actually, SRE, I love data, right? A few ways that we can actually take a data-driven mindset towards this, right? We can think about our DORA metrics. We can work on our space metrics. Sorry, I was really fast with the last slide. I'll be a little slower on this one. These are transition slides. It's fine. Right, but you take these existing frameworks that we have, and you can start applying them to the appropriate parts of your platform, of your engineering processes, and start figuring out ways to turn that data into information that you can action. So once you have data and you're turning that into information and you have an idea of your purpose, right, then you kind of are bringing this together into, well, it's a North Star. It's a map, right? It's a map. This is where are we going and how are we getting there? You're plotting your route. I'm not going to read the whole slide, but really importantly, you're challenging Conway's Law, right? So Conway's Law being that the software development processes and so forth of an organization will match the communication structure of an organization. Humans are not phenomenal at communication. I don't know if you've noticed this. There's room for improvement. So striving to always challenge this, and this is something that Max had talked about and introduced into the book. I don't know if you want to say a few words about that.
Well, it's the hardest part if you're into platform engineering, to fight against structures within your company, to break them because they do not make sense in a perspective of deliver something that bring value to other teams or to other departments. So this is the really hardest part, because usually Conway's Law is built up not over just 1 to 3 years, maybe if you're a digital native company, but we're usually talking about 1 to 3 decades. This is not just someone has built up an email chain throughout the organization to get something released. It's usually something that has so long been in the roots of the company that people even have forgotten about where it come from, right? And then to challenge this law, I think it's the biggest challenge which we can face as a platform engineer. But if we are winning that slowly and breaking up step by step some of these communication channels, or the paths the communication goes, we can turn it around to win also our projects in terms of enable our platforms to go and allow themselves to go new ways. But again, it's a super duper hard challenge to go and take on.
Yeah, so you don't have to deconstruct everything overnight and then reconstruct it, right? It's software, it's iterative. You can take any of those concepts of iterative practicing and apply it to challenging Conway's Law, for example. And I mentioned earlier, somebody's going to have to compromise, something's going to have to give. This is an exact example of that. People sometimes are uncomfortable with change, or they're afraid of change, or they don't immediately see the value of embracing the change. And these are some of those, I think I've heard a few talks today reference that there's a huge social aspect, right? There's the cultural revolution of it. This should be, anybody who's done DevOps for any amount of time is familiar with this kind of idea that there needs to be a cultural shift in order to get there. And so that applies to platform engineering just as well as it applies to any arm of a company or organization that is driving change. So driving change is great, but if you're not careful, you're going to end up with some of the same problems that you already had. So several times in my career, I have experienced it's fine, we're going to rewrite it, and we're going to end up without all of this technical debt. And that's famous last words, right? Because you inevitably end up with the same amount of technical debt. Now, you've just changed its form and function, or maybe it's identical. I've actually seen both. So as this applies to platform engineering, one of the things that you should do is start with user research, right? It's just like doing a new project for a business. Start with the user research. Who are your users? What is your market? Develop feedback loops so that you can get that feedback early and often and work on continuous improvement. And like I said earlier, keep it iterative, right? I think we talk in the book, thinnest viable platforms, start small, build. I'm not going to read this to you. This is just a bunch of examples of the types of questions that you would ask in a user interview or in a feedback loop. I'm going to tell you a story instead while you take your pictures. So very early on in my time at Red Hat, I was actually asked to help identify a replacement for a tool that was no longer having community support. And so we needed to move to something more technically sustainable within the platform that the team supported. And so a few solutions were identified. And there were champions for both, very strong champions for both. So what I sit down and I did, as like brand new, I don't know anybody and I don't know anything yet, was I conducted user interviews. And I walked through the people who this was actually for, none of whom were having a voice in this championship conversation. And I said, what do you need? What would make your life better? What can you not live without? What should we try to preserve as we do a tool migration that is unavoidable? What is important to you? And so I assembled the outcomes of those interviews into a supplementary document for the architecture design proposal that I did, and then we went with that solution, which was identified as the correct one for the user. And so we took the human emotion out of it, we took the ooh shiny out of it, and we brought it down to who has to use this and what do they need. So this again comes into kind of like, so you can manage your technical debts by knowing when to change direction. That was an example of having to change direction. However, when you're taking a decision, when you're choosing to implement something new, sometimes you know this is okay for now. And so that is a perfectly reasonable thing to do because we're doing this iteratively, right? Iterative change is good. It is sustainable. Do what you know you can sustain now. Figure out how to evolve later. Solve the problems you have, not the ones you do not have or do not have yet. And avoid the sunk cost fallacy. So that means you have to have deprecation criteria. And we do talk about this a little bit in our book. When you are selecting a tool, you should know what would cause you to need to migrate. That could be a licensing change, that could be community evaporating, that could be compliance and regulation changes that you may be subjected to or you're striving for, something like IL5. And so maybe what you have doesn't meet those future needs. And so you know when I get to here on my roadmap, on my journey, this is when it's time for us to start having these conversations around deprecation. This is time for us to start working on our exit strategy, not trying to make this thing fit where we're going, but leave it in the past where it belongs. So platform engineering is not, right? This is a great one. It's not the latest Kate's thing you find at KubeCon. It's not Backstage, right?
It's not GitOps. It's not rebranding the DevOps team to being now platform engineering team, or infrastructure departments believing that you know what someone else needs. But why this is so relevant is that you should understand, like, the platform you're building, it's not the technology that you bring towards your company, it's everything in between. It's the processes which you have changed, it's the community which you should have built up, because most likely without a community your platform will fail again. It's about convincing your upper management to not give you some kind of deadlines, some time of cost budgets and stuff like that. A platform itself, it works well, it shows its value by the way how it is running. And that's why you need to bring some kind of transparency to it. That's why you need to have a feedback loop from your end users, your developer teams. But not only developers, right? We talk about operations, we talk about security, we talk about any kind of specialization that is relevant for your organization that can leverage a platform for their value, for their purpose.
Honestly, docs. Sorry to cut in. No. Docs. I've seen docs teams use internal developer platforms. That's a very convenient way for them to manage what they have to do, right? Those are typically fairly non-technical people. But the platform can equally serve them as it does the technical personas as well.
So in the end, the message is everything in the platform should be changeable, and it needs to change over time. The older the platform becomes, the more you have to change maybe here and there some tooling in it. because the tooling itself is not that relevant for the platform. It's relevant how well does it serve your end users in reaching their targets, in making them more efficient. If you're looking into the State of DevOps report, right, we're looking into that most developers just spend 40% of their time developing. If I would develop a software product, I would freak out. Because the other 60%, it's not a question like, do you hang out in Instagram or whatever? No, you're hanging out deep in your console and try to debug something that someone has thought is a good idea, but didn't spend time about bringing it to you, discussing with you, and make it for you usable. And that's what we, as a platform engineering team, needs to achieve. We want to enable others. And developers, again, is just representing one group that we need to enable. Can be any kind of other groups in it. So that's why if you want to define success for platform engineering, for the teams, for the solutions you provide, then look into the people. Look how they contribute to you, how they interact with you, how they build with you the platform together. You will see that the more open you with your platform for any kind of user, the more feedback you will get, the more positive and negative feedback. And I believe there is no positive and negative. Feedback is feedback. It just helps you to think about that you need to change something or improve something further, right? You need to think about the culture. You need to think about, again, breaking Conway's law and do a very, very hard fight. But we have seen it with the largest clusters and systems so far, that if you build up a kind of drive and momentum, then everyone will follow you. They believe you because they trust in your approach, they trust in your team, and will engage with you and support you in any kind of process and project changes. And please delete project. I hate projects because they have a deadline, and if you hit the deadline, you normally are dead. But
projects end, right? This should not end. This should be growing, living, breathing, evolving. So thus, the product mindset, products, you want to have them live forever because you want to always have, frankly, a paycheck. So, like, you know, products have longevity. Projects terminate. So bring that product mindset to your platform.
And so, if you have questions, we are around. In the worst case, and if you believe it doesn't fit into 25 slides or whatsoever, we have written 366 other pages for you.
Facts.
And you can take a look into that one. It goes a little bit more into details. And if you are very fast in the next days, we have 2 more book giveaways, which you can find on tomorrow on the Dynatrace booth in the booth crawl time. So we trade a beer to a book. Just kidding. That's going to get hard.
Max can do it. I have faith in his ability to drink.
After the 20th book, it's getting very critical. And then on the Thursday, we will be at the Syntasso booth and have way more books for you. So our big target is to equip every one of the platform engineers out there with a bundle of our book. And now, thank you very much for your time, and feel free to ask us questions.
Thank you. Nicely done.